For some technical glitch, I couldn't complete the recording of my previous session. So in this session, I'll continue from where I left in my previous session and uncover what is a message broker. And I would like to quickly run through all the message router patterns which we have discussed in the last session. Content-based router routes the messages based on the contents of the message, and message filter is something either it sends the message to the receiver or do not send it based on the filter condition. And dynamic router is something same as a content based router, but if we cannot decide at the design time what content to be examined in a message, then dynamic router with some control component can be routed at runtime and send the messages to the downstream consumers. Recipient list is again a list of components which we predefine in a list, and the message will be sent to those recipients. And this also can be controlled using a control component at runtime and uh, update or add or delete uh, a component from the recipient's list based on runtime conditions. And the next router is a splitter. If you get a bulk message with multiple individual messages, then splitter is a messaging routing pattern which will be useful to split all the individual messages and send it to the downstream consumers. Then aggregator, once you split all the messages and process them individually, and if there is a business case where you have to aggregate all of them and send it to the downstream as a single message, then you have to use an aggregator. And aggregator is stateful because you have to maintain the state and you have to see if all the messages that were uh, received or processed or not. And the next pattern or a message routing pattern is resequencer. And if the business demands that you have to process the messages in the same order it received, then a resequencer might be useful to resequence all the processed messages, because in aggregator, if you choose to do parallel processing, then you do not have the control on the sequence of the flow or sequence of the messages. Then you have to resequence them using a resequencer, which is again a stateful component. You have to maintain the state to see if you have received all the messages that were processed or not. And these are all the simple message routing patterns. Then we have composed message routers. The first one is composed message processor, which is essentially two or more simple message routing patterns used in in a complex message routing solution. For example, you split the messages if you get a bulk order and then process them. Then again, you have to send or route the individual messages to different downstream consumers. Then you have to use a content-based router. And if you have to aggregate them again, you have to use an aggregator. So based on the business complexity and the requirements, you may have to use two or more simple message routers, which comes under composed message processor. Then comes the scatter gather, which is again a bulk message which will be splitted or scattered into individual messages and sent to different receivers. And then again, at the end, you have to gather all the messages that were processed and sent to the downstream consumer. That is gather. Then routing slip. A routing slip is something which is a list of components where you will be sending the message to all those list of components. And process manager is something which is similar to routing slip, but routing slip is predefined, predetermined, linear, whereas process manager is dynamic and it doesn't need to follow a linear path. So with all these message routing patterns, at times your integration solution may become like this with so many point-to-point, with so many point-to-point channels, and it can easily become an integration spaghetti, which is really hard to maintain and hard for the new team members to understand. And for this reason, if the point-to-point channels are growing in large numbers, you have to look for a message pattern called message broker, which is a hub and spoke model, which will essentially have a hub where all the message processing happens, and based on the conditions met, it will be routed to different apps which are like spokes. I'll stop here.